So you have to be able to know your history to know that you're capable of being better, despite what circumstances you're in. And be strong enough within your own, and here's a word that we haven't said, but we've talked around, strong enough in your own character.
You're now tuning into a segment we call Attractive Habits. Mannerism is just not being polite or the pleasing thing. It's more than that. For me, it's the way you carry yourself, not just physically, mentally, emotionally, but also economic education as well. As speakers, we aim to bring leaders to the table to give insight on topics that will help define the upcoming generation. It's going to be fun. With that being said, take a seat. Today we have with us TR, and then we also have Sean Burroughs as well. I'm not gonna give you too much details about them. I'm gonna allow them to take the seats and give themselves a proper introduction as far as what they do, who they are, and how did we come about this. TR, go ahead.
Well, John, I appreciate being on this show and particularly with a venue or stage to be able to speak and I would like to say our peers, but I'm 60 years into life, so but and yet I still consider myself a young man.
Hey, you look good, man. You look good.
Well, thank you very much for that. But it is I agree with you, and it is quite imperative to be able to speak to young people. I am, let's see, just a few things about me. I pastored a church for 20 plus years. I'm a father, and happy Father's Day for those you two guys and for those that are out there listening. Father of three children and four grandchildren. I am married, been this year will be 43 years of marriage for my wife and I. And it has just been a great run. But the foundation of all of it for me, the aspiration of being a professional speaker is on the menu now, as well as being a real estate investor. But those are seeds that I'm currently planting, even in my senior years, or what many people will call senior years. So I don't want to have anyone interrupt their dream by any obstacle. And certainly I'd love to speak on that point. But that's in a nutshell who I am. And again, I do appreciate the opportunity to be able to share here tonight.
TR, thanks for being here as well, man. Thank you so much. And 42 years, that's a lot, man. I'm only in my I met my wife. I'm sorry, me and my wife have been together for 9 years, but we only been married for 4. So
Okay.
I guess I got to climb a ladder, man, to reach you. So big ups to you, Sean.
Yeah. Well, again, thanks a lot for the invite. Thanks a lot for giving me the opportunity to speak here today. This is actually kind of humbling, but my background, former active duty Marine, served in the Marine Corps for 8 years, moved all around the country, and ended up here in Florida, the wonderful state of Florida, down here in Northport, and father of 4 kids, divorced. So I have the other perspective as well to give. I'm not quite, I would consider myself being middle-aged at that 45. 45. And currently I own a health insurance agency that's been in effect for about 5 years now, and just venturing off into the speaking and coaching world here, and stupid excited about it. And it's, how you get to these places. It's not just, you wake up and you have a good idea, but you have the good idea and you put the action behind it. And that means all aspects in your life in order to align your life in the ways that you want your life to be. Means I am a keep it real kind of guy. And so with that, I will turn that back over, because I don't want to steal your thunder, because I don't know what's coming down the pipeline, but I'm excited. So
Well, all right, guys. Again, thank you so much for being here again. You guys are very bright individuals, of course, and I couldn't see anyone else to help me do this show besides you two. And Sean, I respect you for your service as well. Thank you for the service that you're giving to this country as well. And TR, thank you for being a great gentleman as well, man. Guys, it is June. It's not a birthday, of course. It's not my birthday. I don't know if it's your birthday, Sean, or TR. It's not. No. All right. So we all know June is a month that has a lot of deep connection when it comes to celebration. Have you guys ever heard of Juneteenth?
Yes, I have.
Yes,
All right.
absolutely.
So was it from school or was it when I mean school, is it from how early was the school? And was it after college or in college? What was the what was the error in that time for you guys when you guys heard about Juneteenth? Not learn about it, but heard about it.
I don't know if I can pinpoint specifically when I knew. I think from, well, I'm a native of Atlanta. And being a native of Atlanta brings with it a lot of things that kind of attach you to Black history. I mean, Atlanta is noted for being a cultural mecca of people of color. During the time that I was growing up, any given day, you're walking downtown and there's Andrew Young, there's John Lewis, and Dr. King, Martin Luther King Jr.'s house, birth house was downtown area.
Wow.
So you got a chance to see people of color in very prominent positions. And I like to say this, and I don't mean any harm when I say it. They had Cadillacs, but they weren't the pink Cadillacs with the dice in the mirror because somebody had a big hat. They were legitimately earned guys. So you drank the Kool-Aid of getting a wealth of Black history. I just drank that up, and after I'd gone to college, I went to college, a small liberal arts Lutheran college in St. Peter, Minnesota, and it was that made me look at it with a greater microscope, because in college, the total opposite from where I grew up in Atlanta, the college was about 8,000, the town was about 8,000 people, about 3,000 on campus. At that time, Minnesota was less than 1% Black.
Wow.
So it was the total opposite. So I really, when would come back home, I'd see it. So Juneteenth found its birth somewhere in there. I mean, it's in the soup, it's in there. But it, as you start to do, and by the way, another footnote, my brother-in-law actually marched with Dr. King. He, in fact, was a strategist for the Selma March.
Okay.
So there was some history in there. So there were things, little nuggets being dropped about all the time. And it just kind of gravitated in there. I can't pinpoint exactly a date.
Gotcha. Sean.
Well, for myself, it was a little later in life. You know, you heard about it, but it was never really talked about. Growing up in upstate New York, Rochester, New York, um, there was not a huge, well, I'll say there's not a huge cultural presence, but it was just never really talked about. It's not something that's been brought up a ton. So there was not a lot of education behind it. Understanding later in life. So it was more later in life that I learned about it. It's just literally a few years ago, where I heard of it and really started understanding more about the Juneteenth not let's say celebration, but bringing awareness to or acknowledging. Um, and yeah, that's it's just only been a few years for me. So
Wow, man. To be honest, for me, it's the same thing as well. I didn't hear the word or the phrase Juneteenth until after college. Um, of course, I went to public school, of course. But not to say if they did teach it, then it didn't stick with me.
mhm.
Okay, so therefore it didn't resonate. It's until recently, I would say maybe within 2013, before I graduated college, of course, um, that came about. And how it came about was really from my wife. She's like, yo, you should look into it. And of course, I saw sometime on social media, I would see people posting, "Oh, happy Juneteenth," and so on and so forth. But today, to get to the nitty gritty, of course, what exactly is Juneteenth? If you guys can elaborate in your own words, Tr.
Okay. Now, of course, we have to acknowledge the elephant in the room.
Correct.
Of course, this today, in fact, I think is the official day that now President Biden signed the mandate indicating that Juneteenth is now a federal holiday.
That's correct.
So that now it is recognized on the United States calendar as a national holiday. So that's a big
One.
step in terms of simply acknowledging the fact that it existed, that there was a time when people of color were not made aware of their own freedom. Of course, the Emancipation Proclamation took effect the 1st of January, 1863. The Civil War is still going on, but that is when the Emancipation Proclamation is signed saying that people of color were now free.
Right.
It was not until 2.5 years later, June 19th, 1865, that people in Galveston, Texas now learned that they were free. And now the soldiers, the Civil War is over. Soldiers are now coming to town saying, hey, you're free. And they didn't know. They didn't know. So the robbery of slavery is a robbery of life in and of itself. But then to take insult and add injury to it, this other 2.5 years when, people were simply not made aware. Now, it does speak to something for us today, and hopefully I'm not jumping ahead and I don't want to take a lot of time from Sean, but it does speak to us today that we must be, and we're talking to young people, you must be connected. You must be in the know. Those that would say, I don't like to read, I don't like to be aware, et cetera, et cetera. Well, of course, they did not have internet. Many of them probably couldn't read. So it wouldn't have been something, they could have printed it in paper and it would not have been even acknowledged because, slavery, it was, illegal for them to be taught to read.
Correct.
But now that is not our situation in most situations. I mean, most of us either have a phone or access to it. So in my era, when I would ask my parents a question, the answer automatically was, look it up. Well, nobody says that anymore. It says, you Google it.
Google it, correct.
Google it. And it's even simpler than that. Now you can just say, what's the lady's name? Siri.
Yeah.
What is it? just, so ignorance and not being in the know is no longer an excuse for anyone. But that's the backdrop of it.
Well said, Tr. Well said. Sean, any intake?
I co-sign on everything you said there, and I think I don't know. I'm just gonna speak, and what comes. But I think one of the ways that we can honor what took place then and be aware of it is to live our lives according. We didn't ask for a lot of those things that happened back during slavery and stuff like that, and we didn't ask for all those things to take place. But now that we have the rights and responsibilities, then we also have those rights. Now we have the responsibility to take the information that we have and use it to benefit ourselves. Yes, being educated is first and foremost paramount across the board. Even in my own respect, I have to get a little more educated on it. But at the same time, I feel that in order for me to pay respects, I have to live my life in a certain way that brings not just honor to those who've come before me, but honor to my own house. Right. And there's a certain amount of pride that you have to take. And to have pride does not mean you have to be disrespectful. To have pride means I know who I am, I know whose I am, and nobody can take that from me. And that's how you carry yourself. And yes, please and thank you, as we talked about earlier, is a representation thereof. But with that being said, it's also how we conduct ourselves. People will judge us 6 ways to Sunday before we even open up our mouths. It's how you conduct yourself, how you handle yourself, how you carry yourself. If you have pride in yourself, you're going to carry yourself a certain way. And um, understanding the history is the first step. Understanding that and living your life in such a way that brings honor and to those people that suffered through there. There's honor in suffrage. So being able to live our lives accordingly is, from my perspective, the best way to understand it and to dig into it, so that it's not just words, it's also an action. So
Wow, guys. To both your point and then Sean to kind of go after you as well. And TR, you also said back in the days, most of our parents couldn't read or write because it was against the law, the norms for slave to be educated or to learn a few words. Both parents of mine were not educated as far when it comes to school. So literally, reading, writing, knowing math, of course, all that stuff was never there. So all they knew was farming. So farming was the only thing they knew how to do. That way they could provide for their family. Of course, they could count money. Of course, things like that. Over time, you learn, you pick up, you adapt. But to your point, it's like you said, you could Google things nowadays. So if you don't try to learn things, what's going on around you, then therefore you have no chance of evading what may repeat itself from the past. And when I say that, because I've seen so much movies where they talk about slavery or whatever it is, and nothing wrong with that. I used to know it. Damn, why is another slave movie? Why is there another slave movie? But someone told me, John, sometime maybe they seen the movie in a different context, but they were like, John, maybe because these stuff weren't taught in high school and elementary, so therefore nowadays they have to be bring about and make aware of. That way we don't go back to the way of being in. Not saying we're not educated or we didn't know, or simply because we didn't know, because we didn't try. So therefore, to your point, the way you carry yourself, Sean, like I said, conduct yourself is it's 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 up to the most importance, because it tells a lot about you, and like you said, not only for the people that came before you, but for your household as well. So it means so much. But guys, how do we celebrate Juneteenth for the most part? How do we celebrate it?
Why don't we let Sean go first this time? I think I take the
great.
lion's share much.
The guy that knows not much about it. You know what? It's, I guess, in this respect, you should, just like any other holiday, take some time and educate yourself more, learn more about what took place and what's going on. What I believe that's the only real way to do it, and formulate your plan on how you want to be better and do better going forward in life. Um, Education's a never-ending process. So at no point in time in your life will you ever wake up and say, I know it all. If you do, you're probably translated. You're probably not on this earth anymore. You're up there in the stratosphere. But the only way to celebrate it, from my perspective, is just to learn more about it and honor it.
Sounds great.
So
Sounds great. TR?
How much time do I have now? One of my superheroes of Black history is Frederick Douglass. Mm. Frederick Douglass, well, he and Harriet Tubman are just king and queen of Black history for me.
Like that.
Both of them share the roots of being slaves themselves. But in much the same way Sean was just mentioning there, said, this is the circumstance that I was born in, but I have to be better than this. And both of them, by sheer determination, by the grace of God, determined, I'm coming out of this.
It's dead.
Coming out of this. And if you know anything about their histories, and please do, because learning history helps you to see what's possible. None of us in this age, the way we know it now, will have to come from as low a place as either of those guys had to come from. I bring up Frederick's name, or I'm sorry, Mr. Douglas. I didn't know him that well. But to just kind of make it shorter, because I could go on and on, because I love them so.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
But he was asked on one occasion, because Frederick, to Sean and I, to all three of us, as you know, Frederick Douglass became an orator. He was a guy that was not educated. He stole an education. He would get with the little white boys that he was living with and read a book and get a book, and he stole it, you know, and he learned to read. And he got so good at it, stealing an education, that he became an orator.
That's correct.
So much so that when he escaped to the North and started his orations, the people said, you could not have been a slave. You talk too good. Just no. They didn't believe what he was saying. They would not make themselves believe that he had been a slave.
That's correct.
He talked too well. You know, he determined within himself the circumstances. No one could say in this day and time that their circumstances was worse than Frederick Douglass or Harriet Tubman. And yet they determined to take themselves out of it. Again, Frederick became an orator, and he made his money speaking. Think about this, 1800s, a black man making a living speaking. And listen, you know he had to be speaking to white people.
That's correct.
Because black people would have been afraid to come out to listen to abolitionist language. So he was getting paid. Wow, that just blows my mind. Now, on one occasion, he was asked to speak at a 4th of July Independence Day celebration. And maybe you know this story, but he was insulted by that because of Juneteenth. How is it that you could call on me, he says, to speak about liberation? We weren't emancipated on the 4th of July.
That's correct.
We weren't. 1776 meant nothing to us. You know, it wasn't 1865 that the paper was signed. Of course, you know what happens after that. But, you know, so he did it on a different day. No, I'm not doing it. So you have to be able to know your history, to know that you're capable of being better, despite what circumstances you're in. And be strong enough within your own, and here's a word that we haven't said, but we've talked around, strong enough in your own character that you know your history and you won't let anyone take the prizes away from you. Neither of my parents were educated in that sense either. My father, 3rd grade. His dad told him, he was the oldest child. He said, son, you don't need all that book learning to keep that mule behind that plow straight. Just keep that line straight. That's all. And so you don't need school. My mother got to as far as the 11th grade. So all of the demerits from life and circumstances, please don't allow those to say, I can't do it. We have, and Sean said it very well, a responsibility to do what God called us to do. Because our calling, and gosh, I could go a long time with this, so y'all just pull me up. Our calling is based on the fact that God placed a seed in us. And every one of us have at least one gift that God has given us, at least
Mhm.
one. The parable of the talent
Mhm.
says there's at least one in you, and you have a responsibility to nurture that seed. And if you nurture it, he says, if you feed, you put a seed in the ground and water it, it's gonna grow. It just does. It's the natural thing. But if we ignore it, if we allow weeds to choke it, if we just say tomorrow, and so John, I appreciate your confession about procrastination. We can't. Now, let me get to the heart of your question. I think, how do we celebrate it? I think we dilute it very much if all we do is have another barbecue,
That's correct.
right? Because if we are grown men now and we're saying we just found out about it, then it's necessary to sow that seed very young in our children, that they see it, that they know what's going on. Now, at the same time, studying Black history, in my opinion, is not the same thing as projecting white guilt. Because often what we try to do in teaching Black history is teach white hate.
That's correct.
Mhm.
That's correct.
Now, in this current era, in my opinion, we are the flavor of the month. Black is cool right now. It'll change. It was cool when back in my day we would say it loud. I'm black and I'm proud. Believe it or not, I had an afro one day.
I don't believe you.
That was back in the day when we go. But it was cool then, and then it goes away. Then they start killing Black people, right? But then all of a sudden they went too far and killed too many. And George Floyd said, "Whoa!" People said, "Wait a minute,"
Mm-hmm.
because that was the same thing that happened in '65 with King. I mean, it was all right that was black over here and white over there. That was all right until he brought the cameras out and showed the dogs and the water hoses, and then all of a sudden, Americans couldn't go to Europe and say we are the mercy police. You should follow our example. And people say, well, wait a minute. What example
Yeah.
are you trying to show us when we're looking at what you did to Dr. King? So then it became popular. Wait a minute now, we better leave these, you know? So we're the flavor of the month now. But if we are to coexist on the earth, and we have to, this is the only place we got.
That's true.
I mean, they trying to get Mars and the moon, I'm gonna let y'all go first. I remember the Tuskegee experiment. Y'all go. But until then, we're here and we have to exist together. So we're at a point where now we can communicate. But let's not either of us come to the table saying that I'm better than you or you're better than me, because in God's sight, we're just men. We're just women. That's just it. We have different gifts and different talents, but that's like the body. I was telling my grandkids the other day, he said, they get into little squabbles, and I say, well, it's like the human body. I mean, the body has eyes, the body has ears, and the mouth, nose. If you get hungry, your eyes can't say I'm in charge because the eyes can see it, but it can't reach it. You can't reach it. You just see it. So you need your hands. You need the other parts of the whole body to make everything function together. So we can't be egotistical about it, but we must be proud of who we are on every plane. So I'll stop there.
I was
And
gonna ask you, do we celebrate holidays due to deeply rooted rooted cause or just about popular demands? It's just something we see on TV. Oh, let me do that because it's very popular. Like, so obviously for you guys, that's not the case.
Wow, that's a good one. I think a lot of us go with the flow. And you can at the end of the day, every day is a holiday because we have the opportunity to live. We have an opportunity to do the things, live our calling, live our passion. Um, every day should be a holiday. But at some time you got to take it behind the work too, so it can't be a federal holiday. But but if you, I don't know, I'm a big proponent. If you live your life the way you're supposed to live your life, I'm grateful for every day. That's just how it is. I'll participate in your normal everyday recognized holidays, but I also try to take advantage of learning a little bit about those unspoken gems. And to learn about them doesn't necessarily mean you have to make everybody else recognize and observe that holiday. It's just you learn about it, you recognize it, you observe it, and you move on about your life. If there's something powerful enough there that you want to share with somebody, feel free to do so. And if you're going to share it with somebody, you got to be educated behind it too, because people will call you out.
That's true.
But at the same time, it's, in order to observe a holiday, it's a personal action. I don't necessarily, I have a lot of my business partners are Jewish. I acknowledge, I don't celebrate the Jewish holidays. There's a lot of other holidays that happen that, I respect it. I acknowledge it. Hey, and I'll give a little bit of a nod to that holiday, but it doesn't mean I have to take on that weight that transpired as a result of making that holiday. So having Juneteenth, it's being able to acknowledge and respect it without forcing somebody else to say, oh, we have to, in order for, and I'll just speak freely here, in order for us as non-African Americans, we now have to show respect to the African American community by celebrating Juneteenth. No, just acknowledge the fact that it's there and learn something more about it, so that when we bring it up in a conversation, we can actually have a conversation. Sure. Or you can learn some more about it instead of being on the defense about it. There's no longer a reason to be ignorant. You can't pull that card anymore. But at the same time, we don't, as African Americans, we don't have to beat people up with our history. It's our responsibility to learn our history and be able to hold a civil conversation about our history.
Great point. I have two questions for you guys. One, for me, I just recently celebrated May 18th. As a Haitian man, May 18th is a huge celebration for our Flag Day, pretty much the day our flag was made. And then and also in 1804, that's when we fought the French and we won our independence. So so of course recently I celebrated that, and that was a huge thing for me, and is a huge thing for many Haitian as well. And even for many other non-Haitian cultures who also seen that as a gateway for a revolution to transpire for the other people's freedom. Now, as we talk about that right now, as we look into society nowadays, is there a limit to fight for your rights? If so, what is the cutting point?
TR, I'm going to hike that one to you first.
Let me see if I understand your question. Is there a limit to?
Is there the question? Is there a limit to fight for your rights? Because as we can see, we see a lot of people riot differently. People protest differently, and based on the level of what they're protesting for, things can escalate to maybe someone losing their life. Is there a limit or a cutting point where we said this is how we should riot, and this is how we're gonna create a foundation for rioting. Is there a cutting point to where enough is enough, or what's the limit?
Wow, that's
I
that's a good one.
and let me see. I'm going to say this and tell me whether or not this addresses your question. One of the things that I inherit by virtue of my age and the era that I grew up in, I grew up seeing the nonviolent movement. Again, married 40 this year, be 43 years. My wife's brother intricately involved with Dr. King and the movement. During my latter years of high school, and I don't say this proudly, but I have to confess it. The first book that I read on my own, cover to cover, was the autobiography of Malcolm X. Volunteer, it wasn't assigned to me. It was a book that I read, and I took it down like, man, a hungry man going to the table. I was all over it. So during a period and an era where the nonviolent peace protest was there, we were also encompassed with Rap Brown, Black Power, Malcolm X, ballots of bullets, all of that. So you got a chance to see and hear and experience the extremes. Now, the success of the King movement, nonviolent peace protests, it is one that requires patience, and it requires a lot of discipline, because by and large, you now have young people who didn't grow up with this notion of blacks over here and whites over here, and you can't use this water fountain. They grew up now saying, wait a minute, I want to go to Woolworths and I want a tuna sandwich at the counter with a Coke and a straw in it. Right? And because their parents told them you can't do that. You don't go to Woolworths, because they've been taught that themselves. But here's a new generation. So Dr. King says that you go there, but you let them hit you in the head. Now, I was a teenager before. You may not believe that, but I was a teenager before. And that was during the time, no, man, I don't think so. So when Malcolm and Stokely and those guys come about saying ballots or bullets, or no, if you kill some of mine, the only way you're going to respect what happened is I kill some of yours. And you get these philosophies in your mind. Now, I said all that, and I'll say this. To a large degree, I think both those movements needed to be there, because in a lot of respects, the King movement, because it was a slowly progressing movement, it was working. I mean, the bus boycott was, if I'm not mistaken, I think 385 days. Mm-hmm. That's a long time to be walking. You going to work, but you got to walk to work.
That's right. You
don't catch the bus, you walk to work. In Alabama, in the heat. So you feel me? So I want you to get a picture. I mean, you from Haiti, you know what heat feels like. You got to walk.
Scorching.
So it's 385 days. So that's taking some time. On the other side, you got somebody, no, we ain't taking no more time. You hit me. We got the Black Panthers. We got people like that who are saying. Now, what I'm saying is, in many respects, somebody needed to hear that they are impatient, that we're going to have to deal with somebody because they're serious. They're coming. Now, they can't win a war because we got tanks. They got a few machine guns. We got tanks, right? So they can't win, but they will take a few of us out. So to kind of just dull that a little bit, let's deal with somebody. Well, who are you going to deal with? We're not going to deal with Malcolm because we heard what he said. We're not going to deal with Stokely. We heard what he said. Who can we deal with? Because now you forced my hand. You follow me?
That's correct.
Who can we deal? Get that King guy on the phone. We can talk to him. You know, so I think what do? You have to search within yourself to see who you are. In scripture, even Judas was necessary. We needed Judas. Someone needed to betray Jesus to bring him to where he was. You know, as ugly as that sound, he was necessary. And Jesus said it himself. He said, this has to be, but woe to the man that does it.
That's true.
You know, so it had to be. So we have circumstances. Look, so what you now have to do is to search you. Again, that gift inside of you. You have to be true to that. Who are you? Where are you going? What is your calling? God put you in this life, in this time. You were not born during the caveman era. You were not born during the slavery era. I hear a lot of people, man, if I was a slave, so no, you wouldn't.
No, you wouldn't.
You would have did what they did because, you know, you've been dead. Now, there was some Nat Turners in the world who said, no, I ain't doing it. Well, you know, if you know the history, Nat didn't take that, but, you know, Nat didn't last long. He took some with him, though. So so Nat had a place in our history. But you're being armed with these names and what they did, and the fact that they were not all people of militia. They were intelligent people. There were W.B. Du Boises, there were Booker T. Washingtons, there were George Washington Carvers. There were these people who were intellects and, in fact, aristocrats that you need to know and study. So for us, it means please, please, please. It's not just another day to put the pig on the grill. Mm-hmm. Come on, let's talk to our kids about what this is about. Because I need you to be armed with a truth that you are as good as any other man, any other woman. And it's not because you are proficient at Ebonics. It's because you know, if you came here from Haiti, you speak, what's the language called?
Creole.
Oh man, I thought it was something else. Okay, I was gonna mess it up. I'm glad you didn't embarrass me.
It's also French as well.
So you speak Creole because that's your native tongue.
Correct.
But you now are here in America.
Correct.
So I'm gonna learn this tongue too. It's not that I have forsaken Creole.
Correct.
But I know Creole. So if I go to the hood back in Haiti, don't trip, because I got this. But if I show up
exactly
at the White House, I got that too.
You got to come correct.
So I know how to play this game. You get a lot of Spanish people who say, look, when you are at home, you only speak Spanish.
I heard that before.
So we respect who we are here in this house. But when you leave this door, you only speak English. Because we have to play the marketplace.
That's true.
You can't go out there and demand something and you're not in the marketplace. You got this is a business. How can you handle this business that's going on? You don't just look, I'm black, I want this. Well, hold on. Hold on. You only get paid in life according to the value that you bring to the marketplace. And if you bring no value to the marketplace, nobody giving you no money. I mean, I got 10 million hula hoops in my garage. How can I sell them? Ain't nobody buying no hula hoops. today, I mean, give it 10 more years, they'll come back. You know, but so what are the extremes? I think you have to be you,
That's true.
because there are sometimes certain things are necessary. The Bible even tells us this: there is a time for all things. There's a time to laugh, there's a time to cry, there is a time to kill. Ooh. So you have to know where you are, be in God's spirit, and you can be led by him to do what you need to do. And I'm not advocating violence and let's go out there and kill people. I'm saying be in his will so that you know what you have to do. And you're not being led by the press or by the media or by this clique or this group. You know because ultimately you have to give an account to what the gift is that he put in you. So what did you do with what I gave you? What did you do with it?
Mhm.
Well, I buried it. Oh no, that's unacceptable.
Guys,
Okay, I'll stop it.
no. TR, man. Again, dude, I could sit here listen to you all day, man, and I'm sure Sean agrees as well, because it's it's great, great things that you always have to say. So again, guys, thank you so much for being here. Again, as you guys know, I heard, like I said before, mannerism is part of being educated, and education is value. So you get in what you put out of it. So you can no longer said you don't know, you didn't have the chance, you didn't have the time, because nowadays there's so much leeways for us to get the knowledge that we're looking for. YouTube, from another person, whatever it is, the knowledge is out there. So let's go find it. Sean, before we go, where can we reach out to you and find you?
Definitely on YouTube. You can find me at Burroughs Motivation on YouTube and also Burroughs Motivation on Facebook. So
Sounds good. TR.
And so that's a big question. My wife is trying to find me. I mean, what? I am in the process now in the I guess the birthing room of putting all those things together. I and this is a longer story, but for now, just be in touch with John and John to connect me. I'll get all those things ready soon.
Gotcha. And
If I can say this though,
go ahead.
young people, please, please, please establish what you want to be. Identify your goals. Take some time and write down on paper where where do you want to be in 5 years, in 10 years, in 15 years, and identify, be get some details, not just I want to be well off. That's not a goal. Be specific in where you want to be and what you want to do. And if you do that, it gives you the strength to be able to say yes and no to certain things. There were certain guys, everybody was bringing a joint, man. You want a joint? You want a joint? The guys who could get away with it were the athletes.
That's true.
Said, no, man, I can't do it because I'm playing sports, so I can't. So he may not have wanted to do it anyway, but he had a justifiable reason to say I'm an athlete. If you say that I have a goal of doing X, Y, Z, and that's why I'm saying no to this, because you're more vested in where you're going than where you are.
Correct.
So determine where you want to be and make that decision and get busy. Sean has already said, put some action behind it. Had a friend of mine say, it's all right to pray, but put some foots on those prayers.
Let's go. Guys, again, thank you from the bottom of my heart, guys. I really appreciate you guys. And for all the viewers that are listening and watching, don't forget to tune in to our channel on YouTube, Augmentation Motivation. This is Attractive Habits, guys. Again, I will put Sean's link in the below. If you want to reach out to TR, reach out to me. We'll pass the message on. But again, knowledge is power, guys. Don't be fooled by what you see on TV. You yourself could do exactly what TR said. Become what you want to do. Become what you want to be. Get behind the 8 ball and run towards your goal, toward the destination, of course. Guys, again, thank you. Happy Father's Day to all. And
Father's
to
Day,
all.
guys.
Happy Father's Day.
Let's get it. Let's get it. Let's get it. Thank you.